Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac. Joining me tonight is my good old buddy, old pal, Nikki G. What's going on, man?
Hey man, it's a great day. It's a summer day. It's the dead time of the Cavs off season, but I'm excited to talk Cavs. Always excited to talk Cavs.
As the episode indicates, it has been a long off season, and we're not even all the way through it yet. It is just the beginning of August here. We've had a couple of transactions, not necessarily any free agent additions, so that kind of sucks that we can't discuss that. But at the end of the day, the Cavaliers have done a couple of things since the last time we've talked. They've found a new head coach in Kenny Atkinson. They re-signed members of their core. They've drafted a rookie who appears to be the real deal in Jalen Tyson. But we are here to answer some of your questions. So we're going to dig right on into it if you don't mind, Nikki. I'm going to hit you with a question from Mike Sufert. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly over on X, Twitter, whatever people are calling it these days. He says, as it stands now, what would you rank the Cavs bench? And he's really literally asking how we would rank the bench among the 30 teams. I'll let you take the first swing at this if you don't mind.
I remember Mike. I see him on Twitter sometimes. What's up, Mike? Ranking the bench amongst the entire league. That is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talked about the depth in the playoffs, right? That was one of the weaker points for the Cavs. When we were healthy, it felt like, especially in the middle of the season, people were speaking highly of the bench. Talked about being 9-10 men deep. I think the lack of free agency moves is oddly kind of foreshadowing how the Cavs feel about their bench. It seems in general the organization's higher on the roster than the fans and people outside. So, but I mean, you finish despite injuries top 8 in the league. You're missing a starter to two for a lot of that portion. I think your floor for the bench is at least middle of the league. And I think you can go as far as up into maybe punching near the top 10, but probably can't say that now, especially months away from the season beginning and everything. So I think it's fair. At least the Cavs probably feel this. And I think people who aren't down on the Cavs roster so much, I think the bench could play up to a top 10 to 15 bench in the NBA. I think it's somewhere in that range, yeah.
I think it's totally dependent upon who we're factoring into that bench, right? Because there's still a looming decision to be made in regards to Isaac Okoro. We don't really know what is going on with that situation. It continues to look like he's probably going to return on either the qualifying offer, which honestly I hope not, because we don't want to risk him walking away for nothing. We don't want to risk losing an asset for nothing, or a multi-year extension. I don't necessarily feel like the sign and trade is going to happen. I just don't see it happening. I know there's a lot of talk out there about a potential DFS or, Cam Johnson type move out there with a Brooklyn, but more and more I'm starting to feel like Isaac Okoro is going to be a Cleveland Cavalier come the 2024-25 season, at least at the start. Without even factoring in Okoro though, I mean, the bench is still, it's a little iffy to me. Beyond Karis LeVert, presumably Craig Porter Jr., who I'm sure the Cavaliers want to give a bigger role this year. Dean Wade, George Niang, who we're hoping has a bounce back season under Kenny Atkinson. There just isn't too many proven pieces. I mean, as we speak, the Cavaliers only roster 12 players right now. That is Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, LeVert, Strus, Mobley, Niang, Wade, Tyson, who I think is going to be a year one contributor. So maybe he picks up some of the pieces here. Ty Jerome, who so many Cavaliers fans seem to have forgotten about, who I think will actually play a role this year at some capacity. Sam Merrill, who is a sharpshooter of the highest chord, but there's a common thing. And Craig Porter Jr. There's a common theme here.
Dean Wade as well.
Yes, Dean Wade. There's a common theme that is running rampant with a lot of these players, though, and that is the size. Like the positional versatility is just not there. There are a lot of overlap in these players, and so I just don't know how the minutes are going to be distributed among this bench. And viewing that and seeing who we have available to us on this roster right now, I can't help but feel that I'm I'm not super high on the bench just yet. I think I might be able to get there, but not having a true backup big outside of, I guess, Dean Wade, if you're gonna have him playing some minutes at backup 5 in emergency situations, because we all know that Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are gonna take turns manning the backup center role at times in various lineups. But not having that true backup big, not having a little bit more size out of that wing group, I'm still kind of in the same place that I am with this group. So I wouldn't necessarily rank them as a bottom 10 bench, but I don't know if I can go as high as top 10 is their ceiling. I'm not there yet. They got to iron out a few details. I need to see at least one move be made, and hopefully that one move is a backup big. That is the one thing that I'm waiting on right now.
Yeah, so it sounds like I'm thinking about this in the 10 to 15. You're thinking about this in 15 to 20. It makes sense. I think, at least to give you some confidence, 2 years ago, we entered this Donovan Mitchell 4 with Robin Lopez. This past year, we do with Tristan Thompson. I think there's good reason to believe Kobe Altman will bring in some sort of size at that position. I think in general, these players that we see on this bench that maybe we're not as high on, I think if you just think about it in terms of like what their market value could be, it's probably safe to assume these guys will play better than they did closing out the season. That's a huge belief in Kenny Atkinson, obviously, but I think George Niang can be better. I think Caris LeVert could be a lot better, actually. Ty Jerome, like you said, basically an afterthought. I mean, the guy was he joined the Cavs for actually a prominent role to play for like a bigger contract as a backup point guard somewhere else, and he just lost the opportunity. But the same opportunity he has this year, so I wouldn't. You also have Craig and Jalen Tyson who can also make off the bench. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit higher on the bench. I agree with the need for size. I think it is probably a safer bet that this is not the roster that enters the playoffs. I think the Cavs are in a situation right now, one of 3 teams that haven't made a move. Obviously trying to figure out the Okoro situation, which changes a lot of stuff with the hard cap. The good thing that I will say about the Cavs, even though we haven't solved some of the issues we need to solve right now, it's very true. We also haven't created new issues just yet. That's one benefit I see. We haven't taken on future money. We haven't the big thing that we've done, like you started talking about Kenny Atkinson. You started talking about the extensions to Mobley and Mitchell and now Allen, right? Those moves are moves that are not just about this season. Those moves are 2025, 2026, 27 moves, right? And by the time you get to 2027, this is a second apron team. So when it comes to looking at the Okoro situation or looking at a backup big or looking at a Niang replacement or whatever have you, the Cavs are kind of trying to build leverage against the market a little bit here. You don't want to overpay on anybody. You don't want to take future money. You want to bring guys in who need you who may need you as much as you need them, so much as trying to go out and overpay, which they may have done last year a little bit with guys like Niang and such. So, I'm hoping that the patience pays off. I'm pretty confident. You extend Mitchell for at least 2 years, right? He's here to contend. So you're here to give him a team that contends. So I believe the moves will come. I think we're going to be more of a spicier trade deadline team than any other.
I would hope so, just because I'm not truly inspired by the bench right now, but they do have the potential to surprise me. I'll put it that way because I really do. I really do feel like Jalen Tyson is going to make a pretty big impact in year one. I do think we're going to see a bounce back season from George Niang, who, I mean, prior to signing on with Cleveland, shot 40% or better in 5 straight seasons. It is very, very, I think it is very, very reasonable to expect that any Kenny Atkinson offense with so much motion and a hell of a lot more opportunity for creation, that players like George Niang, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, Evan Mobley, you really could just list off the entire roster. I think everybody is going to benefit from having an offensive mind like Kenny Atkinson in town. But I do think it's reasonable to expect some of these guys to have bounce back seasons. The one thing that we have seen time and time again with this roster, though, is that we have issues with health, though. And I think that's another caveat here. That's another thing that kind of worries me a little bit in terms of depth. Dean Wade, we know that when he is healthy, when he is confident, he can be as impactful as ever, with especially on the defensive end of the floor. And we know that he actually had the 3-ball drop in at specific points last year, and he shot a career best. But if you're not healthy, it's not really. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't make a difference. So we have to get that depth, and hopefully, as you said, maybe they'll be active at the deadline. I know that there's some talk about this Jarrett Allen extension adding to his value, and I think that there's some validity in that. And hopefully, come midseason, we are not talking about a trade, but if there is, this is the way I look at it. The Cavaliers will be able to recoup some of the assets that were lost in the Mitchell trade, and they'll be able to reshuffle the deck. But let's pivot to this next question up here from Even in Cleveland _WKS says, which player outside of the core four do you think will make the biggest impact on the team this season? And since I put you on the spot with question number one, I guess I'll take the first swing at this one. Honestly, I think that we're going to see a big season out of Caris LeVert. I know that last year he was very inconsistent at times. Last year, there was periods during last year when I legitimately felt like he could have been a 6th man of the year candidate, and he legitimately looked like that at times. But there were other times where he just played like his head was in his ass. I mean, there were times that were very frustrating with Caris LeVert, and that has kind of been the case during his entire tenure in Cleveland. But I think reuniting him with Kenny Atkinson, getting him with a coach that he has familiarity with, and an offense that he has familiarity with a lot more motion and a lot more opportunities to create, a lot more off-ball actions, I think Caris LeVert is going to experience closer to what we saw him be or look like rather in Brooklyn. Who do you think is going to have the biggest impact outside of the core four?
Yeah, I think Caris LeVert's the objective answer. I think what he can do. Caris LeVert is a strong caliber player who's accepted a 6-man role. Like, this is a guy. If you go back and watch what he was doing with Kenny Atkinson in Brooklyn, this guy's a scorer. You mentioned the lack of faith you may have in some of the bench players. People ripped on George Niang last year for not being able to shoot well. The Cavs did not shoot well. They ripped on
George Niang for a lot of reasons, though, Nikki.
A lot of reasons,
for the weight. They ripped on him for the defense. My man Tony Pesta, Tony. He's got a whole reel of him, falling back and whatnot. They ripped on that man for just non-basketball reasons at times, but the point stands.
But so many of those things can be overcome by shooting. And I just feel like him, Strus, even Garland and other guys, like, there was a general lack of confidence. There was a general lack of belief, I think, in some of this offense. I think Kenny Atkinson, a new philosophy, does shift that. I think Caris LeVert finding his confidence, weak side shooters finding their habits and their confidence, I think it comes back. I think there's going to be pretty even contribution across the board after Caris LeVert. I expect the team to be actually pretty deep. I think maybe the more interesting question would be, like, who would be the most surprising impact this season? Because in terms of biggest, I think it has to be Caris LeVert. He's the best player coming out that bench. Strus, I think, is going to be. I thought Strus was actually great for us last year. I mean, I thought as a leader, I thought as somebody as a bench piece, a guy who kind of really committed to doing all the little dirty things you have to do to win, who understands the game. I think I have high expectations for Strus, but the most surprising impactor I believe will come this year. I actually think Jalen Tyson can walk into the NBA right now and make an impact. You mentioned the double big or the overlaps in positions and the lack of size in some ways, right? One of the things the Cavs are doing, maintaining double big, extending Allen. I agree with you. I don't think it's just about the trade asset angle. I think there's a genuine belief in the organization that they can make Mobley Allen. I think Kenny Atkinson believes that Mobley is not going to be a non-shooting big forever, or that he can stagger bigs a lot to get the most value out of them. So I actually think there's a good belief in Allen, so that they want to really see this double big thing through. That's one philosophy that they're really pushing for, the defensive identity with those two. Yeah. On the offensive end, there's this philosophy. We were all draft night. and we were all shocked by the Jalen Tyson draft pick, right? We were like, who is this guy? We weren't even, he was on none of our boards really because he was projected to go 7, 8, 10 picks ahead or later, right? So what I noticed about that pick and what Kobe talks about after his in the presser thing, he was saying that like in general, and you look at the Boston Celtics, a team that's an example of this, the Cavs do have a lack of players position by position who can pass, dribble, and shoot. Cerebral players, guys who can create, guys who can like not only just drive the kick and shoot, but drive, kick, get the kick out, and then create another drive and create another flow and keep the offense going and create more opportunities for you, right? If you have only 2 main ball handlers, 2 bigs, and a couple of wings that are just spot-up shooters, it limits your flow offensively. It limits your ceiling in many ways. That's one of the reasons why I really love the Jalen Tyson after it, even before we saw him in Summer League, was like, this guy is cerebral. This guy understands how to keep plays flowing, how to like fit into different spots with primary ball handler, off ball handler, can play the dunker spot for rebounding, right? So a guy who can kind of like move around and keep that flow offensively, that I can see, that's how you start to develop that offensive identity that can be sustainable. So I like that approach for the Cavs, and I think we're going to see some of it this year with Jalen Tyson.
Honestly, I mean, I agree. If we're talking about surprise impact guys, the question for me will be how many minutes will they feel comfortable playing him? Because one would have to think to start this season, it's Max Strus, it's Karis LeVert, hell, throw Sam Merrill in there that are getting most of those minutes at the 2-3 at those spots. And I know with Jalen Tyson, he kind of plays bigger than his listed size. So you might even be able to get away with playing him in some smaller lineups at the 4. I think Kenny's going to do some funky stuff this year, but I would have to agree. I mean, having a guy who can create for himself, having a guy that will attack the offensive glass the way that we saw this man do in Summer League, and I'm sure we'll see it in preseason, that's refreshing because at the wing position over the last couple of seasons, really since LeBron left town, we just have not seen a great rebounding 3. Unless you're counting Lauri Markkanen, who I really don't even consider to be a wing, but I guess some people do.
We made him a wing. He wasn't really a wing before he came to Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. We made it sexy for him to be in that spot. But but Tyson definitely feels like a guy who's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think he's going to get enough time to be considered like a rookie of the year type favorite or finalist or, be first or second team. But hell, maybe he will expedite the whole process on LeVert with him being in his final year of his contract. And that's another thing. Like if LeVert is moved at the deadline, like a lot of people feel like he might be, maybe we'll get some assets back from that, and that'll free up some space for LeVert to operate in, for Tyson to operate in, but we'll have to see. But one thing is for certain, that dude can play.
For sure. I'm excited to see it. I think just the choice of him, like we hear it in the fan base all the time on Twitter, right? We also know it's a real thing. We need size. We're tired of having 6'5" guards, this, that, right? But what's so exciting about this is that, things like size, defense, rebounding, essential. They're also cheaper. It's also easier to acquire some of that talent. What's hard to acquire is people who are like cerebral, people who understand, who have skill sets, who are flexible, who can add flow to your offense. Those are rare intangibles that are much more expensive. To find a rookie who can potentially be a cost control player and potentially contribute year 1, year 2 like that, similar or even more so than Craig did last year. To me, I thought it was the right choice, especially since we lost Tristan DeSilva. So, I thought it was a home run pick. Excited to see what it is.
For sure. And the next question kind of fits right in with this same line of thought of the bench, right? Question number 3, backup center or backup center. Okay, I guess maybe that's a typo. I copy and pasted it directly.
Is he saying bench Evan Mobley? Is that what this is?
No, I think what this question is actually asking is who is going to be the backup center. Right now, we don't technically have one on the roster, so I'm guessing that he is asking if Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen is going to fill that role right now. And I would have to say yes, even if the Cavaliers end up bringing back a Tristan Thompson or signing somebody on the open market when the options just really aren't that great at backup big. even if somebody else is brought in, I still would have to believe that if it's not Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen soaking up minutes in very specific lineups at the backup five, it'll be Dean Wade. I mean, there are a couple different options that they can explore, but I would have to think that Evan or Jarrett fill that role. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm really curious. I'm really curious how Kenny balances between double big and staggering. JB did not have a good handle on it. He was very inconsistent with like figuring that out. He didn't really have a feel for it. Very guessy, especially late game situations. I'm interested to see how Kenny figures it out. I think my guess is he's gonna, especially when we get to. I mean, I think he has to try a fair amount of both. I think he has to really see a good amount of minutes of with them together and with them apart. Obviously, they're best apart, right? So I expect Evan to be staggered a lot and Allen to be staggered a lot to fill that role while they do find that backup big. I'm pretty confident they're going to find a backup big by the time the season starts. There are some trade options out there. They do have some decent sized contracts that can be moved. You could we talk about the Donovan Mitchell trade and moving up for Laurie Markkinen, and you hear these Cavs fans kind of talk hindsight 2020 about how we should have kept Laurie and traded Allen instead, and that would have been a better fit. That's still not true because you would have had to pay him. So I think there are options out there, bigs, that some teams are not going to be prepared to pay. And those are opportunities I think Kobe is waiting for. And he has the contracts to move it, especially if those assets start to rebuild their value in the first half of the season. But in the meantime, yes, I do think Evan, Allen, they will both fill the role. There will be a lot of staggering. And I think the Cavs have a lot of confidence that they can play together in late game situations. So we'll see. But yeah, confident this is not the final front courtroom situation.
Let's hope so, because as of right now, I mean, they're going to be relying on Dean and maybe even George Niang in some lineups out there. Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm time will tell. I'm really curious to see what they end up doing at the 4-5 because they let Isaiah Mobley go without even really, in my opinion, giving him too big of a chance. And I know there's still a possibility that he could return. Maybe Tristan returns, or hell, maybe even Marcus Morris returns, who we're getting ready to dig into here in just a second. But
yeah,
I just they got to do something. They roster 12. They're going to sign a couple of other guys just as roster filler at the end of the day. And they'll probably leave at least one spot open for flexibility at the trade deadline. But we just got to be patient, and that is the toughest part of the offseason, especially when we're seeing everybody else making moves, right? But as I hinted to, here's our next question here. How would you feel about Marcus Morris Sr. coming back? And that comes from Peasy Jr. season. Honestly, I would love to see Marcus Morris come back. I know that I think it's boiled down to Cleveland and Philly, if I'm not mistaken, are the two destinations that are being mentioned out there. And I think that you look at what these two teams offer, and I can understand, with a MVP candidate and Paul George and a couple other pieces over there in Philly, if Marcus Morris wants to go back over there. As if I'm not mistaken, he spent time with Philly last season, but I think it makes a lot of sense for him to come back to Cleveland too. Maybe not necessarily from a monetary standpoint, as we can't really offer him that much, but from a role perspective, you look at what we need, right? And he showed that in those playoffs, in that series against Boston, what he can still do, what he is still capable of as a floor spacer, as a mid-range artist out there, and as a competent defender, at least competent enough. So I would like to see Marcus Morris come back. I think we got to see enough of him last year for me to confidently say that he would, at the very least, provide you with Dean Wade insurance or George Niang insurance in case he looks like a dud again. But yeah, how do you feel about Marcus Morris, man?
Honestly, at the very least, if it's to take away depth from a team like Boston or Philly, I think it's a good idea. It doesn't cost you much. Like you said, an insurance policy. It's also probably it's not a rigid thing, right? It's a veteran. It's a guy who's movable. It's a guy who adds locker room edge. It's to me all positives, especially unless there's like a better option, obviously. But
Do the
if there are
comments
better
that he
options,
made, the comments that he made in regards to Jarrett Allen, does that still play a
yeah.
role in your mind anywhere?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly. We haven't really seen bad locker room juju with this core, So it's hard. He's new. He's actually like the newest person on the team, so it's hard to mention that cracked anything. But I think there wouldn't be reports about him coming back if they hadn't worked through that. So Allen doesn't seem like the kind of guy to take it personally. So we'll ride with the 13th, 12th guy off the bench, not sinking the ship. Yeah.
Right. There are worse signings out there than bringing back a guy who you at the very least saw can hold his own out there in spot minutes.
Yeah,
He's not a
he was
rotation
better than we
guy.
expected, honestly. Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, that's how we feel about Marcus Morris. Question 5. How do you feel about the Cavs trying to re-sign free agent Lamar Stevens back for bigger size at the wing? This is coming from I Am True Treasure over on X Twitter. Our affinity with former Cavaliers, because it was suggested to me by somebody else too that we should possibly take a look at reuniting with Jetty Osman as well, which at this point I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to, but Lamar, and I know he got an opportunity in Memphis and he did some things out there. Even in the game against Cleveland just last season, it was nice to see him knock down some shots, but I think the time has passed, right? If you're expecting Lamar to be like a rotation caliber player, probably not the best. If you're signing him for depth, I would be okay with that. But I would have zero expectations for Lamar Stevens actually playing real minutes, especially in a postseason setting for Cleveland. So if it's not like a depth addition, like just literally to sign somebody to one of those open spots, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. How are you feeling about this?
Tony Pesta, higher on George Niang than I am on Lamar Stevens. Run it back, bro. Yeah, no, I think you said it best. I think time passed. I think ironically, the desire to bring Chetty and Lamar back, it was a really savvy move. The way we were able to actually offload both of them and in turn, without giving up too many assets that we wanted, bring Max Strus in a relatively competitive market. So yeah, I think that feels like a step backward for sure.
Yeah, it's literally just roster filler. But then again, I mean, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the players that are available and on the market, basically everybody out there is roster filler at this point because the rotation is largely solidified. The only real thing that you're looking for is that potential backup 3 or backup 5 rather. You would have to think that your backup point guard is solidified with the likes of Craig Porter Jr., Ty Jerome, and numerous other guys that can handle the rock, and both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell taking turns running the offense and spending time with the reserve units. You would have to think that guard spot is solidified. As the 2, you could say the same thing about because there are numerous guys that can fill that role. At the 3, you have Levert, you got Tyson. You might still have Isaac Okoro at the end of the day. A couple other guys you could mention as well. Dean Wade at the 4, George Niang at the 4. The only real spot that you could really look at for maybe some minutes here and there is that 5. But again, the market is just not flush right now. So if you're expecting anything outside of any of these guys, probably not the best idea. So what the hell? Bring back Lamar.
Yeah. Hey, if like you said, the market's not great. If anything, I know we want to move. I know we need to move. I know this can't be the same roster heading to the playoffs. We all know. But it's kind of a green flag that we haven't done anything that feels lateral. Like I feel like it's like the one thing about the NBA is that the one constant is change. Like this is the most ridiculously volatile league in the world, and it's like I think it's actually more likely than not that an opportunity opens up by trade deadline. Like with the CBA, the way that teams cannot take on too much money, the way that teams have to make like really responsible decisions and like get off of situations and like new opportunities will open up. Like I think that's like, it's actually more likely than not that happens. Obviously that doesn't mean it'll go as according to plan necessarily, but I like the philosophy of really holding your cards until you have needle movers. I mean, look around the league. Look at like a team like OKC, a team that overachieved this year, a team that has every asset, every young talent, every tradable chip that you could ever want if you were a franchise talking to Sam Presti, right? And they get the right fit. Isaiah Hartenstein was like honestly a home run for them. Like that mentality, that slow build and using your assets responsibly. I think it's kind of a green flag that the Cavs are adopting a similar type of pace, especially with less assets. So we hope that they can find some leverage and think bigger during the season.
I mean, one would think, right? I think as of right now, yeah, the typical Cleveland fan, the typical Cavs fan is like, man, Kobe Altman sucks at his job.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
We haven't made any moves at all. Fuck him. You know, he's a terrible president of basketball operations. But when I really look at this thing, like this offseason was never truly going to be about like big time swings, big moves. It was always going to be centered around keeping the core together, adding some value to those contracts, as we just saw with Jarrett Allen, and signing Evan Mobley to his rookie scale max extension, and then convincing Donovan Mitchell that, hey, we are still trending in the right direction, convincing him to buy in enough to add additional years to his contract. And all of those things were done. The moves on the margins, that's what we are hoping for, and we still have time for that type of thing to play out. But really, the only thing hampering it right now is this whole Isaac Okoro situation. And so when that's done, when that final domino falls, then we'll see another additional move or two. And it'll be up to Kobe to pull something out of his hat, as we have seen him do in the past with the trades, of yesteryear, and acquiring Jarrett Allen for pennies on the dollar from a Brooklyn, or, trading for a Ricky Rubio. Things like that are on the margins moves, things that you don't think are going to have a huge impact, but end up paying dividends. And so if it takes us to be a little bit patient to see some of these things play out into the season or close to it, then I'm okay with it. But that does not have to mean that I like sitting here and then just looking at the 12 the same 12 players basically that we had, sans Jalen Tyson, who we've added. And so something's got to give here eventually, but I won't harp on this question for too long.
I feel you, man. Something's wrong with me. I'm a weird optimist. I just feel good about our odds here. I feel good about number 4 going to his 4th year. I feel good about Darius, Garland, Kenny Atkinson. I think I feel really good about Donovan Mitchell actually reaching another level. I think a lot of people talk about him. They look at his stats. They look at, the kind of player he is, his ceiling. And people think he's there. I don't even know if he's there yet. Like, I actually think this guy, like...
Wait, Donnie? You don't think Donnie has reached his peak yet?
No. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, like, Donnie, like, 2 years ago when Kobe stole him from New York, I don't think people thought he could be a top 10 player. I don't think people thought he was that good, and he's had his like near MVP level seasons at points with the Cavs. I think he could be even better, especially with the amount of playmaking. He averaged 6 assists a game this year. This is a guy who is notoriously known as being like a shot chucker coming into Cleveland before this. So narratives, I think, with Donnie were kind of crazy. I think there's even more room for him to grow, especially when guys around him get better. I mean, we saw what KD was like for the Warriors. So when you increase the talent around somebody, they can reach new levels too.
I think that's fair. Honestly, under a head coach that has a proven track record of player development, it's fair to expect a modest bump in production from just about everybody across the board due to the increased pace. That's definitely one thing. An uptick in tempo should give touches across the board, and even without like the additional counting stats bump that we're probably going to see from basically everybody, I think the overall impact from some of these players, if not all of them, is going to go up, just because Kenny Atkinson is very creative, or we're going to see a lot of things that we did not see during the JB Bickerstaff era. And that is no slight to JB. I remain a JB fan. I hope that he ends up proving a lot of his doubters wrong over there in Detroit, but we all know what it is, right? There's a huge difference in terms of offensive mindedness, offensive production, when you're talking about Kenny Atkinson versus a JB Bickerstaff, who is way more of a defensive mind than anything. But yeah, there's reason for optimism. So I understand your optimism, and I to a degree I shared. I'm a little skeptical about certain things. And here's a question that has everything to do with skepticism. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I have to ask it. Will or J.A., meaning Jarrett Allen, be a Cavalier on opening night? How are you feeling about his chances of being a Cleveland Cavalier?
Ricky says yeah, so
yes.
I'm in.
For those of you watching, or rather listening in audio version, Nikki just shook his bobblehead up and down at that question. I never thought I'd see that. So you believe that he will be a Cavalier come opening night? Explain yourself.
He's going to be a Cavalier probably for at least the next 5-6 months, right? Like I think
he has to be, right?
After signing that extension. Yeah. You extended him. Mm-hmm. You want to. You. I think the with the Mobley extension and the Allen extension and the Mitchell extension, I think people realize, like Cavs fans especially, we want it all right away. And to be fair, your skepticism is justified because there is pressure. There is timelines here that we have to hit. But at the same time, you do need to like lift off, and you do need to like use your runway appropriately. I think you need data. Like you need to see what this team looks like with Kenny. You need to see enough double big. You need to see enough stagger big. You got to see what exactly you're getting from the bench. You got to see what Caris LeVert can actually do right now with Kenny. Is he winning with this guy, right? So you got to see exactly what shakes out here. You need this 5-6 months, these 186 days from today till trade deadline. You need these days to really make a call and make these next moves and allow the market to flush and create an opportunity for you as well. Jarrett Allen, I think they're higher on him than other people. I think they're higher on him with the double fit than other people are. Minimum 5-6 months they're going to give him to work with Kenny Atkinson and see what it looks like, and then they go from there.
I mean, you can't trade him, right? If I'm not mistaken, I'm no cap guy. I'm no contract guy. I don't really know shit about the CBA. I'm not even going to cap here, but I'll say this: you can't trade him. You have to wait. There's deadlines now. There are timelines that you have to follow before you can actually even move Jarrett Allen, who just signed that extension. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'll hold me to that, people who are listening, but there is, in my opinion, 0% chance that Jarrett Allen is moved anything earlier than at midseason, which I think it's probably not going to be the case. I think that things would have to be going pretty badly. I think we would have to be struggling out of the gate in the first half of the season in order for the Cavaliers to consider a Jarrett Allen move. I do not see it happening during the 2024-25 season. Now, in the 2025-26 offseason, when you have to make a number of decisions, I do believe that you could potentially, depending upon how this upcoming season goes, there is the potential that Jarrett Allen, with that increased value, and hopefully under Kenny, his value only increases in a faster, quicker paced offense, that if they have to consider a move like that, that you will get a good return on investment, or at least more than you probably would have gotten this past offseason, or this current offseason rather. So I just don't think he's going to be moved anytime soon. But I mean, I'm not a mind reader. Time will tell. We'll just have to be patient and see how this season plays out. Our next question.
The last little thing on Jarrett Allen, he got the extension, but he's $20 million a year for this season and next season. As the cap goes up, that flat $20 million actually creates more cap room each year. So for at least the next season, barring a complete, obvious, glaring misfit with this identity, I think it makes sense that he's kind of here for a longer haul. That's their intention, at least.
He's on a bargain deal. He's been on a bargain deal for a long time now, ever since they got him on $20 million a season, and he just got Isaiah Hardenstein money and he's a better player than Isaiah Hardenstein. So
Isaiah Hardenstein down the road money, like it's not even now money. It's exactly a great deal. I hope people see that.
Phenomenal for a guy he's giving you borderline all-star in play for the past couple of seasons. So kudos again to Kobe Altman for doing that, to adding to his value. And even if you're not a fan of the double big lineups, you have to respect the production that Jarrett Allen has been able to give you each and every season that he has been in Cleveland. Moving on from that, we have Our last question here. Would like to hear your opinion on the 3 open spots for the Cavs two-way contracts. I would like to see Luke, Emoni, in a backup center prospect. I mean, you kind of answered your own question, right? I guess if you're looking for my opinion, I'll tell you this. You guys know my affinity for Luke Travers. I want the man in Cleveland in some form or fashion. And I think there was actually an acknowledgement of that by Melbourne United that he is. I think we're going to see Luke Travers brought over this season. I think he will be on a two-way. I know that he has in the past expressed his discontent for the two-way contract because he feels that the NBL is basically just as good as the G League, and I think that there is actual validity to that. But I think it makes sense for Luke to be around the organization that drafted him. I just don't think he can show us anything else, whether that be with the NBL or in a summer league environment, that will come close or even rival what he'll get being around the organization every day. Because as we've seen with him, he's a glue guy of the highest accord when you're talking about players coming in this way. The only real area of his game that I think we all acknowledge that needs big time improvement is the perimeter shot. That is the one thing that we have not really seen him be able to bring to the equation the past really 3 years in summer league play, and it shows in the stat line. He's just shot poorly, and he hasn't taken a ton of attempts from 3-point distance in his 12 summer league appearances. But at the end of the day, he just does so many other things. He impacts the game in so many other ways that I think he could potentially overcome it. But at this point, you got to see him do it with either the Charge or Cleveland or both. So I do expect for him to be on a two-way contract this year, or if not signed outright by Cleveland. As for Emoni Bates, I think in back-to-back summer league appearances that he has actually showcased what he can bring to the table, and that is a perimeter shot, especially off ball, right? We know that he has some creator skills, but I have not seen enough from him to really feel confident about his immediate NBA future. I still think he needs a lot of seasoning, and I think the 2A is the best route for him to take. And I think that is what is going to end up happening, because who else are you going to spit it on? And then the backup big situation here, a backup center prospect. Maybe that's DJ Burns. Maybe that's somebody else. I'm not really sure at this point in time. But yeah, at the very least, Emoni and Luke, they have to fill those roles. At that third spot, I don't know. Maybe they roll into the 2024-25 spot season with that spot open. How are you feeling about the 2A contracts right now?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. I think it'd be weird if Emoni did get one. He was just on one. I think Luke probably does. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Backup centers didn't really have it. I can kind of see them going out of house for that.
Mhm.
I think that probably makes the most sense. But yeah, I mean, there's already some young guys on this team. Like, you already have like Porter and Tyson likely to they're already guaranteed contracts, and they're already like going to be on the roster and everything playing. So like, they're in terms of these two ways, like what they expect out of them. Like, this is a team that's trying to contend now. Probably
Yeah.
gonna have more veterans in that bench. So what you do that two way is probably gonna be a flyer for the future. Odds are, because I don't know if we saw other two ways. I was actually a fan of Darius Brown, just watching him play. I don't know if
He
he's
was
gonna get
okay.
it. I liked watching him. I thought he was like, oh, this guy's he's Craig Porter Jr. is the main point guard, but whenever he had a moment, I thought he made the most of it. Zaire Smith could be interesting. He offered a lot with his size there.
How did you feel
Um,
about Dexter Dennis?
well, I don't even remember. I don't. It's not really memorable to me in that way. What is he sticking? Is he sticking out to you for something?
No, not necessarily sticking out to me through the summer league play. He joined the Charts midseason last year, and he did a
Last year,
couple of
yeah.
things. Yeah, but he didn't really pop off in summer league because honestly, he didn't play a ton. As you know, some of these other guys didn't. Like, I was expecting DJ Burns to get a lot of run in summer league play, and we barely saw him as opposed to some of these other bigger names out here. But I don't know what they're going to end up doing with that third spot, man. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the last couple of years, Kobe has found Craig Porter Jr. He went up and grabbed Jalen Tyson. I'm hoping that continues to find some diamonds in the rough. and he finds somebody who maybe down the line can become another valuable cost control player. So we'll see. I really don't know. My gut is saying that third spot probably goes outside of the current summer league roster.
I think that's fair. And you pointed this out, so I'm just going to mention it. Kobe's track record with finding guys who are at the very least serviceable at various points during the season dates back a long time now. He did this with Dean Wade. He did it with Lamar Stevens. You mentioned Craig Porter Jr. We are probably going to be looking at Emoni Bates here in the future being a contributor at some level, and then Luke Travers, right? It goes back a long way when you're talking about some of the diamonds in the rough that he's been able to unearth, and hopefully he's able to do that this time around as well. But that's really the gist of it. There's just not shit going on in this offseason right now.
We're talking about two ways. We're talking about the third two-way contract now. Yeah.
Literally, that is the point that we are at in the offseason right now, where we're just speculating on who's going to be that final guy on the two-way. But man, I don't think I got your opinion of this when it actually happened live, but the extensions for each one of these core pieces that just happened. Just very, very quickly, I want to hear your thoughts on each one. Darius Garland is under contract for a few more seasons, right? You already have him listed. You already have him locked in, and who knows what his future looks like in Cleveland beyond this upcoming season, because where there's smoke, there's always going to be fire when it comes with him. You re-signed Jarrett Allen, you added some value to his contract, and then you got Donovan Mitchell to buy in at least to the short-term future. So just very, very quickly, tell me your thoughts on each one of these extensions that we've seen, starting with Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell's a home run win. I think it's mutually incentivizing. You got Donovan Mitchell he's committing 2 years of his prime. Like I know that everyone says there was a foregone conclusion and he's just doing this for money. That was not the vibe earlier in the season. That was not the vibe when we were going to Game 7 against Orlando. So I don't know if anybody can call that a foregame conclusion. No way. Like that is a tremendous success for Cleveland to go out, get a player who actually exceeded expectations, make a pretty good deal for him. Now Utah stuck with him now, I'm telling you. And he extended. You've gotten Donovan for at least 4 years, probably 5, maybe we'll hope, but in his prime and still ascending. He's not the type of person who is going to waste years in his prime if he doesn't believe he can win somewhere. He is not going to turn 30 and be like, well, at least I made my bag, and then go try to win again later. He's happy, and he has a chance to win here, and he believes that home run having Donovan Mitchell.
Do you still believe, really quickly, do you still believe that he is better than Jason Tatum? Because there was a conversation that was had.
Yeah. I still believe. I think we got bounced by the Celtics. Jason Tatum went on and played 2 more rounds of basketball, won the championship, and I still think Donovan Mitchell is a better player than Jason Tatum. And I also got to give Jason Tatum some props though, because I think he got a little bit of shit. He got a little bit of shit for like maybe not being as efficient of a scorer. Jaylen Brown winning the Finals MVP. Honestly, since Game 3 and 4 against Indiana and for the NBA Finals, I thought as a decision maker he was a lot more decisive. I thought he was a way more mature player, I thought. I didn't think he was better than Donovan Mitchell watching him. If you gave Donovan Mitchell that roster with shooters and defenders, I think it'd be a whole different ballgame. But I stand by it. I think the Cavs extended a top 10 player, and that top 10 player believes he could win in Cleveland.
I'm just fucking with you, man. I completely agree with you. I just had to bring that up. Evan Mobley extension. So I'm trying to take this in order. How do you feel about the Evan Mobley extension? Is it just one of those things that just absolutely, well, obviously we know it had to happen. You were never not going to extend him, but your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, you had to do it now because it would have been more expensive next year. If you don't do it, somebody else will. We're scratching the surface with this guy. I think offensive confidence is a big theme that was missing throughout the entire roster outside of maybe just Mitchell and maybe Allen, you can argue. I think he had a lot of that confidence this year with Kenny Atkinson. I think he's going to shoot more. I think he's just going to be a more pivotal part of what we're doing. I think he's going to be every bit as good as we think he is. I don't know if it's going to happen all right away. I personally think it's going to happen. A lot of it will happen this year. But that's what's exciting about him. Every year you can expect more from him. I don't think he's going to hit a ceiling this year, but I think he's going to get close enough to help us contend. So home run, how to do it, best time to do it. You said it, you have to do it.
Alrighty, absolutely agree with that. And then last but not least, before we head out of here, Jarrett Allen, your overall thoughts on extending Allen.
Yeah, it's a win-win, right? It's a win-win. You pay him now before he reaches even more in terms of leverage, and he's making Isaiah Hartenstein money in the future, and he's better than Isaiah Hartenstein. You can argue right now, right? So, yeah, it's a home run deal. Logistically, obviously, gives you the flexibility to trade him because of the value that with that contract now. I will say this. I'm actually high on the Garland Mitchell fit. I actually do think those two together. I know people look at the size and they think it's a redundant skill set. Like I mentioned earlier in the pod about how what I loved about the Jalen Tyson draft pick as well as the Craig Porter Jr. Signing last year. We want cerebral players who can pass and dribble and shoot, right? Having two guys in the backcourt, if we were to move off of Garland right now and put all that playmaking responsibility on Mitchell, that to me creates a new problem. So I actually am very high on that fit and those two working out. The Mobley Allen fit is obviously something that I don't think you can be high on right now, but you want to see it with Kenny. So I don't know what it means in terms of basketball for the Cavs just yet. I just know in terms of like a front office move, it's exactly what you need. It gives you the flexibility both ways, having him long run and also be able to move off of him this season or after the season. So from a financial, from a contract standpoint in this new CBA, definitely the right move. And in terms of if it's going to work in terms of basketball, it's a big we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I could echo similar sentiments in regards to Allen. I think that when they added those years to his contract, it was as much about this season, right? Seeing the viability of the double big lineups as it was literally just making him a more tradable asset. So I'm very interested to see what these two look like under Kitty Atkinson. And I have one last question for you that is kind of off topic here, and that is Isaac Okoro, man. Like, I understand the opinion that is out there about wanting to trade him. I understand people who want to move on from Isaac Okoro, but there's also a huge part of me that I can't help but feel I would like to see what Isaac Okoro looks like in a Kenny Atkinson offense. How do you feel about this whole Isaac Okoro situation? Is there any part of you that wants to see him kept at least one more season? Or are you just saying, are you ready to say fuck it and move on?
The NBA is all about situations. It's super possible that Isaac Okoro becomes who we think he could be. It's very possible. What's feeling like the bigger possibility is that the timeline doesn't line up, and you already have a kind of half young team, half old team, and you just extended Mitchell and you have him for 2 years, and you need to show winning. And Okoro, I think the biggest thing that the Cavs are working through is leverage and trying to just make sure they have as much options come deadline and come next following off seasons. That's probably the most important thing. In terms of impact of Okoro on the basketball court, we know about his perimeter defense. We know of what he can do, the way he buys it. We know he's actually underrated in some respects offensively. He's actually a great finisher at the rim. And I agree, maybe with the Kenny Atkinson offense, he could maybe find his spots and everything. I think the Cavs have to, I'm in favor of qualifying offer just so that, you get to see it with the most affordable option right now and see it for these first 5-6 months till trade deadline, and see if he fits into that Kenny Atkinson thing. Because if he doesn't fit, for example, and you sign up for that long-term deal, now maybe you get less for him back in the trade. Obviously, you risk walking, but again, maybe walking is in this CBA better than latching on to too much future money. So I think I'm a big we'll see guy on Okoro right now. And my biggest thing is just make sure that you don't hamstring yourself. Make sure that you have as much options with him as possible later down the road. So unfortunately, that probably for me puts me on the fence of qualifying offer.
I think that is totally fair, a totally fair way to look at it. Now, when you're talking about the options that you have in regards to him, if he signs that qualifying offer, if I am not mistaken, he becomes an unrestricted free agent. That's one. Number two is any team that you would potentially look at trading him to, you would have to get him to agree with. I think that's how it works. I think that essentially gives him a no trade clause. But at the end of the day, I don't also want them to find themselves in a situation where they're just literally throwing a contract his way just because they don't want to lose him, right? But I
Right.
suppose there's always the possibility that you could ink him to a multi-year extension, with the idea being you move him at the deadline if things just aren't panning out the right way. But I understand wanting to maintain that flexibility. So if he ends up signing the qualifying offer, um, it'll suck in a sense because you could potentially risk losing him for nothing. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about like the future and potential impact of the luxury tax implications that all of this could have, it makes sense. So I get them taking their time with this little situation. I'm just, from an on-court perspective, there's just a huge part of me that wants to see, like, hey, can a coaching change? Can using this guy a little bit differently? Can a quicker pace? Can increased volume? All these different things coming together.
Yeah.
Could that make for a better year for Isaac Okoro? But at the end of the day, I understand, like, everything you said just makes sense. We're in a window right now where you have to kind of prove, like, hey, we're moving forward. We are experiencing uptick. We are experiencing growth, and you have to be able to sell and continue to sell your best player, being Donovan Mitchell, to the long term viability of this whole entire thing, and all of it to work out. And if you have to let some heads roll, starting with Isaac Okoro, then I understand it. But as I always tell you guys, if you like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. If you are watching over on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. You just don't know how much you help a brother out by doing that, because you know how tricky this algorithm can be. Nikki, man, thanks for hopping on such short notice, man.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Like, subscribe, follow Mac. This is gonna be a great season. We have a lot of Cavs coverage coming for you guys. Always happy to be here, Mac, and always good to talk Tabs with all you guys.
All righty, go Cavs.